We got a lot of fun things to discuss in today's video, but none more important than the news we just got in from Nick Underhill, which actually came in yesterday, and it's around Marshon Lattimore in mandatory minicamp that's going to be getting underway here in just a few hours. Lattimore was back at team facilities yesterday on Monday. He reported back in Metairie, so that's some really, really good news around the New Orleans Saints. So let's clap it up. We beat the allegations. The Marshon Lattimore trade is not happening. So if you're pumped up, like this video. If you are excited to have number 23 back in the black and gold and back dominating the NFC South. Let's chop it up. Today's video, I'm going to be diving into some Saints rumors sponsored by Mikey Taylor, one of our loyal subscribers here at Saints Now by Chat Sports. Recently, we went live, and he was our Super Chat MVP, and the deal was whoever the MVP was got to give me an idea to talk about on the show. So me and Mikey got into the lab, and here's what we're cooking up on the video. We're going to be first talking about Drew Brees' Hall of Fame induction and which game that should go down at. And then we're going to be discussing, could Chris Olave be breaking records here in the near future? Got a lot to talk about there. And lastly, is Kool-Aid McKinstry better than Alontae Taylor, and will he be better than Alontae Taylor? It's a loaded show. Do not forget to subscribe because, like I said a little bit ago, we actually will have a second video coming out in a few hours around Saints minicamp and all the news, notes, injury updates, and the takeaways from that. So let's kick things off with the Drew Brees Hall of Fame induction games. I think it could really be any of the four of these. The first one, I don't really need to explain it. Week 7, Sean Payton comes back to the Superdome, prime time. It feels like that's going to be the case. I also don't hate the idea, Week 10 versus the Falcons, bringing in Atlanta, having Drew Brees be inducted in the Hall of Fame against your biggest rival would be kind of a flex, would be pretty fun. I will say this, you have to win that game if that goes down, because that will just be absolutely insane. If you lose that game, Falcons fans will have a field day with that one. I also don't hate the idea Week 15 versus the Commanders. If you remember, Drew Brees did break some records against the Commanders in his time with the black and gold. And on top of that, it's right before Christmas, so maybe they want to do it right before the holidays. Also, it's my birthday, so that'd be kind of fun. Selfishly, I'm rooting for that one. That'd be kind of cool. And lastly, the last home game for the New Orleans Saints, which is going to be Week 17 versus the Raiders. I do believe it's going to be that Week 7 game versus Denver. I don't think it makes sense to do it against the Raiders. There's already a lot going on there. You're going to want to get it done earlier in the season anyway. Same reason why I don't think it's going to be Washington. Every arrow is pointing to that Thursday night game. It just makes too much sense. It feels like that's going to be. So, Mikey, my answer for you, which game will it be? I'm going to say Week 7 versus the Broncos, but once that's made official, of course, we'll let you guys know. But I want you guys to shout out your thoughts. Which game should Drew Brees be inducted into the Saints Hall of Fame? I want you to share your thoughts. Pick any game on the schedule. Obviously, should be a home game. But if you guys think it shouldn't be that Broncos game, let me know what you think. And if you agree it should be the Broncos game, share your thoughts down below. I really want to get you guys to comment on this video. Next on the show, we're going to be breaking down, could Chris Olave be breaking some records? Mikey Taylor specifically asked, could he take down Michael Thomas's 2019 reception record? So let's talk about it. But before we dive into Chris Olave, I got to set the scene here because let's hop in our time machines. Let's travel back in time to a point in our lives when gas wasn't expensive, eggs weren't $5 a gallon, and the Saints were winning a lot of football games. 149 receptions, 1,700 yards, 9 touchdowns, and 11.6 yards per catch. All of that done before the NFL moved to a 17-game season, which is extremely impressive considering the record is still the highest receptions in a single season in the entire NFL's history. Now, it's worth noting, I do believe Michael Thomas got a lot of extra work and a lot of extra production because of the lack of great quality pass catchers in New Orleans at the time. So other wide receivers on the Saints roster included Ted Ginn, Austin Carr, Cameron Meredith, Traquan Smith, Tommy Lee Lewis, Brandon Coleman, Jared Cook, and of course, Alvin Kamara. But I do believe you don't need to shoot for the moon here. You could shoot for the moon. Shoot for the moon, land among the stars. I remember my my middle school football coach telling me that. Michael Thomas is the number 1 and the number 10 single season reception leader, and I do think that Chris Olave, asking him to get to 130 receptions isn't something that's too far-fetched. Now, for some more context in terms of Michael Thomas's early portion of his career, in 2016, he had some pretty good production in his rookie year. 2017, he was really, really good, took a step. The touchdowns went down, but he still had a really good season. And then in 2018, 147 targets, 125 receptions, 1,400 yards, and 9 touchdowns. So this is kind of the stat line I'm trying to inspire Chris Olave to shoot for. I want to see if he can get 125 plus receptions, over 1,400 yards, because I have a firm belief these first 2 seasons, in terms of Chris Olave's numbers, have been really, really good. But take into consideration, you had Andy Dalton, Jameis Winston, and Derek Carr all being your quarterback. You haven't had a single quarterback with multiple seasons yet, so he'll get to develop that chemistry with Derek Carr in year 3. And just to kind of even further dive into the numbers here, this is what the production was for the first 2 seasons for both of these players. Michael Thomas, 270 targets, 196 receptions, Wow, that's way off. Over 2,300 yards and 14 touchdowns, whereas Chris Olave, 257 targets, 159 receptions, 2,100 yards, and 9 touchdowns. And again, I'll say this, I do think that it's important to consider with the New Orleans Saints right now, you have guys like Rashid Shaheed, A.T. Perry, Juwan Johnson. And I think that that's a much better wide receiver and pass-catching group than Ted Ginn, Austin Carr, Cameron Meredith, Traquan Smith, Tommy Lee Lewis, and Jared Cook. Now, some of the argument has to come from the quarterback play too. And the big question is, can Derek Carr replicate what Drew Brees did in 2019? 74.3 completion percentage, 2,900 yards, 27 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. The thing about it is, Carr kind of already did that and almost arguably a little bit better. Obviously, the touchdown numbers are down by 2, so it's not like it's much. The same amount of interceptions. Not even almost 1,000 yards less from Drew Brees in 2019. So if Derek Carr can take another step this season under Clint Kubiak with a good offensive scheme where they're catering towards Chris Olave's strengths, I do believe that this is something that isn't out of the question for Chris Olave. Could he be top 10? Without a doubt. But number one, 150 plus catches, that's really tough to do. And there's a lot of really good wide receivers with great quarterbacks who could actually do that before Chris Olave. But I do think 150 receptions is something that's attainable in the course of his entire career. Now I want you guys to take a guess for me. Will number 12 ever have more than 150 plus, or I guess 150 plus catches? So 150 or more. Just give me a simple yes or no in the comment section. Share your thoughts and let me know what you think down in the comments. So the final topic on today's show, will Kool-Aid McKinstry have a better season than Alontae Taylor? Now, Mikey, I'm going to keep it real with you, man. This is a really tough one to answer because they play very different positions. Now, Kool-Aid McKinstry, it's worth noting, he's dealing with some injury stuff. He hasn't been on the field throughout OTAs, but at minicamp, Dennis Allen does expect him to be a participant in the individual drills and be able to do some work off to the side. So again, subscribe. We'll have updates from minicamp coming at you here in a few hours. But in terms of Alontae Taylor, this is a guy who plays in the slot. He plays in the middle. He sometimes can play on the outside, and I do think he's better on the outside. However, he is a scrappy and physical player, which is why I think Dennis Allen views Taylor as a slot cornerback in general. And I do think that he's a player with boom or bust plays. I mean, he'll have plays where he is lights out. He is one of the best corners on the field. He shuts down your least favorite team's number one wide receiver. And on top of that, he plays with such a great tenacity and a great attitude. I love that about Alontae Taylor. But there is no doubt about it. He needs to take steps in order to develop and in order to further grow in that role as the slot cornerback position. Now, and also for Kool-Aid McKinstry, he's a guy who's going to play on the outside. So it's kind of like comparing apples to peanuts. Or I guess apples to like oranges. It's sure they're in the same position group, but they're playing different things. Apples, oranges, there's both fruits, but they're different types. So he is a player that's going to fight a lot at the point of catch, and he's going to make things really tough for opposing receivers, especially in the route running area of that game. And on top of that, I do believe Kool-Aid McKinstry is a guy who had bad not a lot of production last year for the Crimson Tide, but there's good reason for that. I believe it's because he wasn't targeted a ton, and I think it's because opposing quarterbacks and opposing offensive coordinators knew to not target Kool-Aid McKinstry, which is why Terrion Arnold got such better production this past year for the Crimson Tide. And again, I said he's an outside corner. He has really nice size. He has really nice length, and he's a player who can be a really good contributor, especially considering Paulson Adebo is going to be entering his contract season in his last year with the New Orleans Saints, unless, of course, he gets extended or, re-signed. But he's a free agent after this season, so maybe this is a guy that they're like, we're okay with Marshon Lattimore or Kool-Aid McKinstry. We'll let Paulson and Debo walk, save some money there, and Alontae Taylor's our guy in the middle. Like, I think that that's something that we all have to think about and, have to consider. So it's kind of tough to compare who's going to be better this year. So that's kind of my TED Talk for you, Mikey. It was more so of, I think that they're both have something to bring. They both have things to grow and learn on, but they play different positions, so it's hard to compare who's actually going to be the better player. Now, sound off for me, Saints fans. Which side of the ball are you most excited to watch in 2024? Just type offense or defense down in the comments. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Another reminder, we will have minicamp news, notes, takeaways, injury updates, all sorts of coverage every single day over the next 3 days for Saints mandatory minicamp. And then after that, we'll be getting into cut candidates, winners and losers, and all sorts of other stuff. So be sure to subscribe. The content is not slowing down anytime soon. Y'all stay golden. We'll see you next time.